So are you tracking your workflow in Airtable and you want to keep track of some of the key dates and milestones around your status field? A status field is a single select field where you have specific options. Like when you click into it, you may be tracking your workflow, like each step of the workflow as it hands off between different people. And you want to now capture some dates. Oftentimes what you may jump right into is you may have like a last modified field, but that only tells a small story. So the last modified field only tells you the last time it went to that status, but you really want to know how did it go into this first status? What time did it go into the second status? What time did it go into the third status? This last modified field only tells you that most recent status, even if you put it on the status field. So if I say this is last modified status, this field only shows me like the last time it was modified. So in this video, I'm going to be showing you how to take the status field when it's updated and start timestamping in some other fields. That way you can start keeping track of SLAs. You can start keeping track of how long do certain people on your team take to do certain things. If all of these requests have different people assigned to them, which in this case is the case. And I'm also showing this in dark mode in Airtable. If you're curious about dark mode, throw a comment in the comment section. Dark mode is something I've been testing out here for a little while, but if you like the way that this works and you're curious about it, put a comment down in the comment section. But back to the status field. The status field that we have, if I go through the options, when something is created in this table, it needs assigned. After it needs assigned, then it is to do for our creators. After it is to do, then the creator starts the work. So it is in progress. After it is in progress, then the creator submits the work. So it's in review, but then it switches. So this goes to the reviewer and it could go through a feedback loop. So it could go to the reviewer, then back to the creator, then back to the reviewer, then back to the creator, then back to the reviewer. Eventually, the reviewer would approve it, or maybe we've marked that deliverable as trash and it doesn't need to be done anymore. That's kind of the high level workflow that we're going to be tracking. And on most of these, I really only care, like it's only going to be in some of these statuses once. Other of these statuses, it could be in, if you could imagine how many revision cycles we have, it could be in that revision status for a long time. So we're going to keep track of that using some automations and some date fields that are not, they're not going to be, we're going to have to use an automation and a date field like this. So let me show you the first one. So we already have a few date fields in here. So we have created and last modified status. I like having these almost all the time, no matter what. Last modified status, you can run some formulas on this to get, some people don't like the phrasing I'll use on this, but I call it a rotting timer. It's how long has that, in this case, we're looking at deliverables. How long has that deliverable been rotting in that status? So it's kind of a cool way to look at it. The other date fields we're going to add is, we're going to say date assigned. And this is actually if you're using AI Labs. What I did is I just went and created a field. I named it. If you're using AI Labs in Airtable, it's going to actually suggest what field type you should use. So I'm going to choose date. I'm going to toggle this include time on, and I'm going to create field. I do not want to default this date, and time zones always trick me out. So I'm just going to create that field. So actually, just for sake of this, I'm going to say use same time zone, and I'm going to choose New York City. So this date field, like you could put in a date, like if I say, let's go find something that's in the to-do status, that would be the date that it was assigned. So yeah, it's going to put we're going to build an automation where it's going to take this date and put it in here. But that's as far as a lot of people get, is they may be able to figure out that. After we do that, we are going to look at how you compare these dates. So how you start tracking, okay, how many hours? Maybe you're tracking at the hour level, maybe you're tracking at the day level. How many hours, how many days was it between these different statuses? That way you can see the total amount of time that it took. So what I want to go do is I want to go up into automations. I'm going to add a new automation, and this is going to be, actually, let's just set up a folder because there's going to be quite a few of these. I'm going to move this automation into this folder. This folder is going to be deliverable status timestamp. So really what this automation is going to do is it's going to timestamp. So we're going to say assigned timestamp. So we'll name that automation. We'll come over here and choose a trigger. Our trigger is going to be when a record matches conditions in our deliverables table. We are going to say when the status field is to do creator, that means it's been assigned. And we are also going to say that our other field is not empty. So date assigned is not empty. And then we are going to say after those conditions are true, update the record. It's going to be in the deliverables table. Use the record ID from the step before it. So using that little blue plus, we can pull, I want to update the record from that one. And the field we're going to be updating is the date assigned field. We're going to use this little settings wheel and change this from static to dynamic, meaning that it's going to change differently based on this last modified status field. It's just going to work like that. So if I go back in here, back to the data layer, if I looked at this one and I took out that date field, it's now going to run the automation and it should timestamp it. So long as I turn that automation on. Did I turn that automation on? I did. So I said status is to do creator, date assigned is empty. So I had that wrong. So the date field you're filling in needs to be empty to make this work. So if I fill that in and then I make it not empty, it should timestamp that value for me. Sweet. And if I try to delete it again because that automation's on, it's going to do it again. Okay, so now I want to go with the next one. And we may, after I start going through these, we may speed these up because I'm going to go create this for in progress, in review, and revision. And I actually don't really care about the in progress status. I actually would consider taking that one out unless these are deliverables that take a really long time to produce. So we're going to say first submission date. This actually I think is important to talk about because some of my statuses, it may go into those statuses multiple times. And in that case, I may want to keep track of multiple, like when was it first submitted? Because there's like this feedback cycle. I may want to have it timestamp multiple times because I want to know what time did they first submit it, what time did they submit it second, what time did they submit it third, and so on and so forth. That would get me, I guess really what I'd be looking for was to know how many times it went and how many revisions it needed. So we can keep track of that as well. So we have date assigned, first submission date. And I think just while we're at it, I'll do this up to 3 so you can see it. Maybe you want 4. You can keep going with the same logic that I will show. So we're going to add another date field that's second submission date, and we'll do third submission date too. Okay, so back into the automation. What I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate my previous automation that I did. I'm going to say so that was assigned. Our next logical step is I assign it to somebody, then they submit the work. So submitted timestamp is when they say they hand it off to the reviewer. So in their interface, I have a button that they click and they say, I've done my work, reviewer. It is now your turn to do your work. And I'm actually just going to take this date field off. So as soon as it goes to in review, I'm going to update that. Now I'm going to have conditional logic. So this first one is going to be for our first date field. So first date submission date is empty. If that's the case, I'm going to update the first submission date. So instead of date assigned, we're going to say first submission date. Use the little wheel, change this to dynamic. One fun fact is if you click in here, I'm on a Mac, Command A, Command C, and then Command V is paste. I can copy and paste these values that Airtable lets me pick. So that's going to do first submission date. If I duplicate this, I'm going to say second submission. And then we will do third submission. Need to add third submission date as a field. I have to talk through it. That's my key. If I just narrate it, it'll be good. Okay, so we can turn this one on now. So this is going to start timestamping based on if first submission is empty, if second submission, if third is empty. So let's go back to this and let's go pick one of these. Like I'll pick one of these that's already approved. And sorry to my team because this is going to send some Slack messages to them. So if I say, okay, this is now in review with the reviewer, it should go timestamp the first one. If that then goes back to, so then it may go back to in revision. And then the creator says, okay, now I'm submitting it for review again. That should now go trigger the next one. And it does happen to be exactly noon, which is why it's showing noon. Let's see if it does. All right, let's go check out our automation and see what's going on with that. So it looks like these have ran, but second submission date. Oh, it's because I'm filling in a second submission date. I need to be updating this with the last modified status. If you're watching this and you were trying to yell at me while I was doing that, I apologize. That was my bad. That was a rookie mistake right there. Okay, so this one was approved, but we're just going to throw this back to in progress and now in revision again. And let's see what it does. Wait, in review. Whoops. Sorry if you were yelling at me again there. I apologize again. So then it could go back into do, then back into in revision. And let's see that third one work. Did I choose? I keep choosing the wrong status. In review. Okay. So that you can see those date timestamp work. Those date timestamps work. So let's say now in revision date, revision start date, include a time, same time zone, New York display. So revision start, this is going to be a new automation, but I also now want to start capturing a number field and show this is going to be num revisions. Num revisions. Is that how you spell it? I think so. Revisions are only going to be whole numbers, so no decimals, and we will create that field. So now if we go back into the automation, let's duplicate this first one because I think it's actually going to be simpler. Actually, I take that back. Let's duplicate the second one. Saw a meme recently that was like, when you're watching something trying to fix your car and they're like, actually don't do what I just said. I did it wrong. And then a little bit later, they're like, if you did what I said, don't delete it. And like, you already deleted it. Or like don't plug it back in and you had already done that. So luckily these are low stakes games. If your automations are off here, you don't have to worry about that as much. So this is going to be revision start timestamp. So this is going to be when it is in review with the reviewer. And we'll change the conditions here to be that last field that we just added. Revision start date is empty. Revision start date. Change this thing to dynamic. And there we go. These other ones I'm actually going to delete for now, I think. Yeah. We're just going to delete these other ones. But how do you capture the number of revisions? So let's look at that. So number of revisions, we would know that. No, I guess using in this automation, we'd be counting the number of times it was submitted for review, which it should always be submitted once. I think I'm actually thinking of our next date field, because I've already gotten so far on that. I'm on that automation with naming and everything. This one is actually going to be in review start date. And this one is going to be earlier, but let's go clean up our automation naming. So instead of review, it's going to be in revision. But in order to duplicate lists, let's go finish up the review and then come back to the revision. That way we can figure out how to do the counting. So review timestamp is going to be when it's in review instead of our revision start date. We're going to say the review start date. And then we're going to choose the review date here, make this dynamic, and choose last modified status. Okay, review is done. Now back to revision. The question is, it's like, we set this automation up, but how do I know, like, I don't want to set up a field necessarily. Like, what if there's 20 revisions? I'm not going to set up 20 fields. That's kind of, that's too many fields. But I do want to know precisely how many revisions had to be done, or how many revisions were requested by our reviewer. So here in num revisions, if I go back up to automations before I do that, so we don't know what value to put in this field, so we're going to use a formula. And I usually have these fields that I call dev fields. A lot of my clients know this. I call them dev fields because I want to scare people away from messing with it, because it looks like a relatively useless field, but it's needed to make the automations work. So this field needs to exist. We're going to say revisions plus 1. And the formula is going to be revisions. Also, are you guys enjoying the dark mode? I've been enjoying it. I've really been using it for like the last 2 days, and I've been enjoying it. Let me know in the comments if you've been enjoying dark mode. I didn't even know I could figure out how to do dark mode, but let me know in the comments if you like dark mode. So revisions. So we're going to have this revisions plus 1 field. It's just going to say num revisions plus 1. Now in the automation, we can come back here, and just because we already did a little bit of work with this, we're going to duplicate this update record and then use the 6 little dots and drag it up out of that grouping. Click into this update record. And our field we're going to be updating is num revisions. And I'm going to delete the other field. How I do that so fast is once you see your field at the top. So if I wanted to do date assigned, if I type in some words and I know that one's at the top and I hit the enter button, it adds that field over on the right side. You may only know that if you have tried to add hundreds of fields when you're doing an update record automation before. You have to add them one by one, and that is a little bit of a quick hack. So then the field we want to update with is revisions plus 1. And let's turn that on. So let's see how this works. So I want to move some of these fields over to the left so we can just change statuses and not have to scroll for your sake. So let's go back to this one, our little dummy one right here. Say this is in revision. should say add 1 there. So we requested a revision and it timestamps the date. Now the creator says, I'm done with this. Reviewer, review it again. Reviewer says, now I have this update. So then it goes back into in revision. We should only see it update that number field. Now there's not going to be really any additional dates that I'm tracking with this one, but it's at least going to give me a new piece of data so I can see, okay, why do the people I assign, like these assignees on these tasks, they on average get 2 or 3 revisions, whereas everybody else on average averages 0 or 1. Okay, so now we have a bunch of dates in here. Now, the next question or the next problem you'd have is, what do you do with these dates? And there's like a few different ways that I see it. There's a few different ways that I see it working. And I'm going to, but first, let's move these revision fields back over to the right side. So we have these date fields, and there's 2 primary calculations I see. There's from the previous date to the next date is 1 calculation. So count the number of hours from date assigned to when it's first submitted, or from the date assigned to when the review starts. Wait, no. So date assigned, count the hours from date assigned to first submission, or count the hours from first submission to review, or count the hours from first review to first revision start, or count the hours. Like I need to add some more date fields. So it's like from when the revision starts to when it's completed. And actually some of these may be a little bit duplicative now that I think about it. Do some of these have the same? Okay, well, we'll figure that out later. But the problem is, like, how do we calculate? The other way that I see people tracking hours in this is always just using the baseline of the start date. So the start date, maybe I want to know the number of hours from when any of these are assigned to when it's complete or to a certain milestone. So not caring about like from one status compared to the previous status, but always just from the first status to that status, how long does it take to get there? So those were going to be some of the things we're going to be doing. However you want to do those dates, I'm going to show you this formula once, and you can apply it to whichever of these date fields you want. So we're going to choose a formula. This is going to be hours. Actually, I'll show you this formula twice. From start to, let's see, review. The formula we're going to use, I don't like having a lot of errors in formulas, and so I usually use an if statement to say, because then that prevents errors later on. So we're going to start this with an if, and to get it, you can do like type in if. Well, so if I type in if I put 1 open parentheses, that it then puts the closing parentheses for me. And now that I'm in the if I'm on a Mac, I hold shift and I hit the enter key, it makes it look prettier. It's going to space it out for me. So to prevent errors, I know I have 2 fields that need to be filled in. So I'm going to use an AND formula. So both these fields have to be filled in. So I'm going to choose assigned. Date assigned is my start. And then review. I think this is actually the same as first submission. I could have that wrong, but I think I might have some duplicative fields in here, which is what I was saying earlier. So if you just reference it like this, the way that Airtable, that I pretend Airtable reads this, and this is actually the way it works, is it says if and date assign exists, so it's filled in. If the date's filled in this date assign field, then it's going to work. And then our other thing is first submission date. And if this is filled in, then it will return true. If both of these will return true, then and will return true. If either of these fields are empty, it will return false and not process my formula, or it will not continue to I will leave the value of false empty. And you can see in the if statement, it says if this logical thing is true, then return the value of true, otherwise return value of false. They don't notate it very well here, but value of false is actually optional. So we're just going to leave it empty. So we're going to use a formula called datetime diff. I'm going to use parentheses and then make it pretty. I always get these backwards, so forgive me. But I'm going to say from the date assigned to, so from comma to, so from date assigned to first submission date. And then here is where I'm going to choose hours. So that's how you do hours. If you then want to keep track of days, just duplicate your formula, clean it up, and switch this word to days instead. You can see you could use, I think you could get down to milliseconds, seconds, minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, quarters, years, probably. So that's how you do that. These, because there's such small amounts of time between these dates that I have as examples right here. It's going to do that. It's going to just show zeros. Now, as you're setting this up, you're like, but Ben, how do I get it to work retroactively? It's really hard to make all of this work retroactively. The best I could do for you is I could say, like, you could go copy and paste some of these timestamps for the most recent date that it went in. Like, you're going to know what date all of the ones that are in to do creator went into that status, because you can use the last modified field. But as far as bulk updating all of your historical data, it's not really going to work well. I would say you'll have some really good data in a month, in 2 months. Like, wait a little bit. You're going to have really good data once you have significant change in your statuses and all of these automations are on, timestamping each date field. It's going to work really well. So that's how I work with date fields and statuses. You timestamp things and then you build formulas. And as you can see with these little averages in the interfaces, you can build all of your dashboards around these numeric fields to count the number of hours or days between statuses. So if you have any questions, you have questions about dark mode, you have questions about these, throw a link down in the comments section. But this is really useful for project management as you're wanting to know how fast do things move through the pipeline. So if you want to check out project management videos, I'm going to have a video here on the end screen, and you can learn, I guarantee, a few tips and tricks about project management. But if you want some copies of these formulas and you want some more in-depth guide on this base that we just created here, you want to know more about these date fields, check out the link in the description. And I've put together a guide, some copy-paste formulas for you so you don't have to write these yourself. And you can check it out in the description. Also, I'll give you my statuses and everything you need to do this on your own. Check it out in the description or in the pinned comment, and you can get this as a guide. Let me know. It's in the first comment. Just go click it, put in your email, and you'll get these formulas you can copy and paste. Thank you very much. We'll see you in the next one. Go check out the videos here in the end screen for more project management tips.